I'll admit it. I'm a faithful, yet perpetually disappointed sports fan. As a native of the state of Georgia, I was raised to be a fan of the Atlanta Falcons. And the truth of the matter is, my fandom has only grown as an adult. So sports clearly matter to me. But I'm not the only one. There are millions of people who exercise a level of faith and devotion into their teams of choice. It begs the question, why do sports matter to so many people? On a simple level, sports are fun. But upon a second glance, sports can do so much more. It can bring us together. It can give us a commonality through the good and the bad, the wins and the losses. According to authors Billings and Truman, sports has infiltrated our society to the point that there's very little things left that have been left untouched by athletics. And in many ways, society and our daily lives are very much reflected in sports. So for us, it's clear that there is some sort of social attraction, but in my mind, the relationship between sports and society runs much deeper than that. So today I'm going to explain to you why sports matter and why sports serve as a reflective element within our society. I'm going to explain to you why we have an attraction to sports, how the media certainly perpetuates this love affair, and how the examination of our favorite team can provide us with a social spyglass into the norms and values of our society. Now, let's think for a moment. Why do we love sports? Well, in my mind, it's because of romanticism. Now, think of romance. Sometimes it's illogical, sometimes it's blind, but certainly there's a level of devotion. And I would argue that when it comes to our love of sports, there certainly is a lack of logic. There is a level of devotion, commitment. But more often than not, this relationship is perpetuated by myth. Let me give you an example. There are some parents out there who tell themselves that the only way to teach their children values such as teamwork or camaraderie is through an early involvement in athletics. Now, certainly sports can teach, there's no doubt about that, but is it the only way? And the answer is no, that's a myth. Sports is not the only way to learn these things. And oftentimes we go back to athletics because we see it as an educational outlet. Now, speaking of romanticism and myth, sports also gives us the hero. Okay, now think about that for a moment. Think about the hero. As children, we look to athletes and we say, you know what, I want to be that guy. We emulate that athlete. We dress like that athlete. We perform like that athlete. There is a genuine fascination with that athlete. But what happens when your hero is Mark McGwire, who, as he's speaking to Congress, forgets all the years of steroid abuse? What if your hero was Michael Vick, who went to prison for dogfighting? What if your hero was Mike Tyson, who was convicted of rape? See, here's the myth. We look at these individuals, we put them on a pedestal. The fact is, they are fallible creatures. They are just like us. They make mistakes. But as a sports-consuming society, it hasn't stopped us from ascribing value to these individuals. In many ways, we treat sports like a religion. Now, according to the book, Religion and Sports in American Culture, both religion and sports are social expressions that have functional similarities. Please keep that in mind. Functional similarities. look at how we celebrate religion and sports. We congregate, we gather, usually in the same place at the same time. We celebrate. We dress appropriately for the occasion. And we pledge some level of faith to a deity of our choice or to our favorite team. So you see clearly, we place a level of importance on sports in our society, but to what extent has sports really infiltrated our cultural staples? Let me give you an example. When I say the University of Alabama, very few people are going to say, wow, what a mathematics department. The truth of the matter is, the common individual is going to say, roll Tide. Now, in this instance, we have an educational outlet, an institute of higher education, higher learning, that has become instantly identifiable with the success of its athletic program. Now, before you think to yourself and ask the question, hey, isn't the institution upset about this portrayal? Let me introduce you to the Flutie effect. Named for famed Boston College quarterback Doug Flutie, Harvard business professor Doug Chung found that when a team from a college or university has a level of success in either football or basketball, applications to that school increase 18.7%. So colleges and universities, they benefit from this persona. They benefit from a successful athletic program. And what happens is, as a society, we look towards that athletic program and we instantly ascribe a value that in truth is based on sports. I want you to think about another cultural staple. I want you to think about the holidays, specifically Thanksgiving. Think about how you enjoy Thanksgiving. You gather with family and friends and you feast, right? What happens afterwards? You watch football. Think of it this way, okay? Think of it this way. It has become almost ritualistic. We will make sports fit into our holidays, into dates that matter. And we'll do the reverse as well. We will make sports fit into days that don't matter. And the fact of the matter is, if something interferes with that sport, we will make changes. How many of you have ever heard of a church coordinating their Sunday night service with the Super Bowl? The truth of the matter is they still want to facilitate a level of attendance. And within our society, you could easily argue that maybe there aren't bigger days on the sports calendar than the Super Bowl. We will make sports fit. We will accommodate sports. You even see a crossover between sports and politics. I give you the 1968 Olympics. Americans, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, took to the medal stand. And as the national anthem played, they raised a single fist in the air and they bowed their heads. They staged a silent civil rights protest concerning the conditions that African Americans faced in this country during the civil rights movement. Just this past season in the NFL, we had San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who every time the national anthem played, kneeled and bowed his head. And in Kaepernick's mind, he is making a social statement about the treatment of blacks in our society when it comes to interactions with the police. Now, whether we agree or disagree, these individuals were vilified for their actions. But let's be honest, they are not siloed off from society. They are a part of it. And they face the same problems you and I face, the same issues. The major difference here, they have the platform. Sports afforded them a stage. And so they took that moment to try to incite change. Now, as we say that, the primary conduit of this relationship between sports and society is the media. If we were to make a decision about what is important in our society, and all we did was look at the sheer amount of content, sports would be very high on that list. When you look at television, we have a multitude of Fox Sports and ESPN channels devoted to specific niches within the marketplace. We have mobile apps, we have social media, we have websites, blogs, message boards, magazines. They are all devoted to sports-only content. And no matter what's going on in your local community, no matter what's going on in society, pick up a newspaper. To this day, they still devote roughly 25% of all coverage to sports. Now, a media scholar has told us that the acquisition of information through the media has profound effects on the user and basically can impact what we think is important and how we formulate public opinion. So if we're looking at the media and we're saying to ourselves, what matters? Clearly, sports have to be on that list. Now, with that said, certainly it's somewhat cosmetic to make such a statement, but understand something. The media does not thrive without sports, and sports does not thrive without the media. It's a codependent relationship. One does not work without the other. The media needs sports, the sports need media. Sports does not spread without the media. The media has a source of convenient and cheap content. And let's face facts, we watch sports because we love drama. We expect to see the unexpected. The media is well aware of this. And if you really think about it, if there is a niche that you like in the sports world, you don't have to wait too long. Somebody within the media will tailor content for you. Again, it's a very codependent relationship. Now, with all of that said, it doesn't necessarily tell us how the endeavors of our athletic teams can be reflective of the society in which we live. In my mind, you have to look very much on the local level. And from a local perspective, typically speaking, there is a strong relationship between a community and the teams that represent said community, to the point that they're reflective of one another. Historian Kurt Kipner wrote that sports, particularly in the South, has value. And more often than not, people look toward their sports teams for cultural validation. Now think about that for a moment. We look towards athletics for cultural validation. You see, in Kipner's mind, we should be able to look at the teams that represent us and see a reflection of our norms, our values. So I applied Kipner's contention to my own research. And in my book, Full Court Press, I examined Mississippi State University's men's basketball team during the 1950s and 60s. During this time period, Mississippi State won multiple Southeastern Conference championships. Yet, they never played in the NCAA tournament. That contention today would be unheard of. So why didn't they? Because if Kempner's correct, and we look at Mississippi State and we say that team is reflective of us, one of those values was segregation. And the NCAA tournament was integrated. And understand, in this time period, any consideration to integration was seen as a gross social violation. So Mississippi State stayed away because they had to maintain that reflection with the society in which they lived. Eventually, State did play in the tournament in 1963, and they lost to an integrated team. So what does that say? It tells us that as a society, perhaps what we believe in, perhaps the values we hold true, maybe they're wrong. Maybe our belief and our faith in segregation was wrong. Interestingly enough, the press in Mississippi completely ignored the loss. They moved on because it was not a reality they were willing to address at that point. So if we hold our values true and we expect to see a reflection of our social norms and values within our athletics, Mississippi's system was broken. And it stayed that way, even through the recruitment of African American athletes, which did not happen in that state until 1968. If you want a more contemporary example, I urge you to look at the Olympics. Every day without fail in this country, we hear about the medal count. Why? Because we're number one. We're America. And we have to win. Let me give you the 1988 men's Olympic basketball team. It's the last team in the Olympics, from a male perspective in basketball, that was completely made up of collegiate athletes. And you know what? They won the bronze that year. They lost to the Soviet Union. Now, in a lot of situations, in a lot of countries, a bronze medal is wonderful, but not in America. We're free. We're a democracy. We're number one. And in no way is it acceptable to lose to the Soviet Union during the Cold War. We are not a third place team. We're not a third place country. So what happens? Well, in 1992, the Olympics raid the professional ranks, and we get the fabled dream team of Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. You see, in both situations, something was broken. Those teams weren't reflecting the values of the society in which they served. So you know what? Something had to change. Now, when it comes to the Olympics and men's basketball in '88 and then subsequently in '92, they thought the team was broken. So that's what changed. In Mississippi, it was the society that was broken. And they quickly learned that that archaic, oppressive way of life just wasn't going to last. So see, we can look towards sports and we can learn valuable lessons about ourselves and about the societies in which we live. In closing, let me stress to you that I clearly view sports as being important. And I acknowledge that some people find little interest in the notion of sports, but don't be so quick to dismiss. In my mind, sports do not exist in a vacuum. They are a cog in society, just like education, just like politics, just like religion, just like entertainment. Now, understand, I'm not ascribing value. I am not telling you that one is better than the other. I'm simply asking that you consider the ramifications of what sports does for us as a society and what it says to us. If you want to know what a society thinks, if you want to know what a community holds true, try looking at their representative sports teams. Thank you very much.